Imagine mentioning to your partner just in passing that you don't like driving. You didn't have your own car. And when you moved in, there was only his SUV, which was too big and too unfamiliar. Don't worry, I'll drive you, he said. And you thought, this is love. This is protection. But little by little, that protection became control. One day, you needed to go somewhere. You said, I'll just take the car real quick. He responded, no, you don't like driving. I'll take you. It sounded reasonable until you realized you hadn't driven a mile in 3 years. But it wasn't just about the car anymore. You wanted to go to the store alone. It's late. I'll come with you. You wanted to meet a friend. You're sickly. What if something happens? Just wait until I can go with you. And slowly, without ever making a choice, you stopped asking. Because every time you did, the answer was already decided for you. And before you knew it, you were driving, you were going out alone, and you weren't making choices for yourself anymore. That's how gaslighting works. Not with shouting or accusations, but with small corrections, tiny rewrites of reality, little restrictions that sounded like love, until one day your reality isn't yours anymore. I'm Jordan Travers. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, and we're breaking down the exact two-step process researchers have identified that gaslighters use to manipulate their victims. Gaslighting doesn't start with control. It starts with love, and that's what makes it so dangerous. A 2023 study published in Personal Relationships analyzed 65 gaslighting victims and uncovered the deep psychological toll of this form of manipulation. Most victims reported losing their sense of self, feeling like they've become a shell of who they once were. Many experienced social isolation, either during the relationship as the gaslighter controlled their interactions, or even afterward as they developed a deep distrust of others. And while some survivors found growth and resilience, others said they never fully recovered, even years later. And why do gaslighters do this? The two main reasons researchers found were the first, to avoid accountability for their own bad behavior, like cheating, or to gain control over their partner's thoughts, emotions, and actions. Researchers have identified a two-step process gaslighters use to trap their victims. So let's break it down. Step 1, love bombing. At first, they make you feel like the most important person in the world. Psychologist Willis Klein, the study's lead researcher, found that many gaslighters start by creating an intense emotional bond through love bombing. They shower you with compliments. They're always texting, always calling. They say things like, I've never felt this way before. They move fast. They want to see you all the time. And they say, I just can't get enough of you. But why do they do this? This excessive affection creates a false sense of security, a powerful emotional bond that makes victims feel indebted to the gaslighter. And that's exactly what they want. Because once they know you're attached, the game changes. And step 2, rewriting your reality. Once you're emotionally invested, they start manipulating your perception of reality. Gaslighters undermine their victims by making them doubt their own thoughts, feelings, and memories. It starts with small corrections. That's not what happened. You're remembering it wrong, or you're too sensitive. And each time you doubt yourself just a little more. Psychologists like Robin Stern have identified a gaslighting cycle that many victims go through. It starts with disbelief. At first, you argue back. You know what's real. Then comes in defensiveness. You start trying to prove your side of things. And finally, depression. Eventually, you stop arguing altogether. You assume they're right. Over time, bit by bit, you stop questioning them and start questioning yourself. And that's where they win. But that's not where your story ends. That's where it begins. Because it is possible to take back your control, even if it's little by little. Step 1, spotting the inconsistencies. Imagine you're at a dinner with friends. Someone asks, so have you started driving yet? Before you can answer, he speaks for you. She doesn't like driving. She gets too anxious. You freeze. That wasn't the story. You never said you were anxious. You just said you didn't like driving that one car. But now, that tiny choice has become part of your identity. And suddenly, you see it. It isn't just about driving. It's about every decision you ever have tried to make. So where do you go from here? Step 2, reality check. Don't fight, just observe. That night, you listened closely. You don't argue, you don't push back, you just watch, and you notice the pattern. Every time you remember something, they say it never happened. Every time you voice a feeling, they tell you that you're overreacting. And every time you want something, they tell you they know what's best. It's like waking up from a fog. And for the first time in years, you ask yourself, what if I'm not crazy? What if I've been right this whole time? And that's when you know. Step 3, bringing in a second opinion. You text a friend, you tell them everything, and their response, that's not normal. That's not love. That's control. And just like that, the walls start to crumble. Because once you hear the truth from someone else, the gaslighter's hold starts to weaken. And for the first time, you don't feel so alone. And step 4, setting a boundary and watching the reaction. And then you finally do it. You tell them, I'm going to take the car. And that's the test, because a healthy partner would say, okay, drive safe. But they don't. Instead, they get defensive. They get angry. Why are you acting like this? Are you seriously making a big deal out of this? After everything I do for you? And suddenly, everything clicks. This isn't love. This is control. And you're not going to live like this anymore. You take the keys, you get in the car, and for the first time in 3 years, you drive. No permission, no waiting. And in that moment, you realize something. It was never about driving. It was about power. And now you have taken yours back. So tell me, have you ever experienced gaslighting? What was the moment you finally saw the truth? Drop your story in the comments. And if you want more research-backed insights on manipulation, relationships, and taking back control, hit subscribe. I'm Jordan Travers. I'm the clinical director of Awake Therapy, and I'll see you next time. Bye.